and welcome to the IndieWire Studio at the 2025 Sundance Film Festival. My name is Ryan Lattanzio, and I'm the Deputy Editor of Film at IndieWire. And we're very excited to have with us today the director and co-writers and star of the new Sundance premiere, Train Dreams. Hello, guys. Great to have you here.
Good to be here. Good to see you, Ryan.
It's really great timing to have you, Greg Kwedar, and Clint Bentley with us right now because your film that you also worked on together, Sing Sing, was just nominated for a number of Oscars. And it was a really long journey on that movie because it premiered at Toronto in 2023.
Yeah.
Here we are at Sundance 2025. Where were you when were you watching the announcement, and what was your reaction?
So I was traveling up here to Sundance, and I had an early flight out of Dallas or out of Austin to meet Clint in Dallas, and then Dallas to Sundance. And I was at the airport at 5 a.m. before the nominations. And I just started weeping kind of uncontrollably in the airport, just thinking about the 8.5-year journey we've had with that movie and all the people that we traveled with, and just trying to get to a place of gratitude before knowing some result that we had been also working towards.
Greg's always crying.
I'm also always crying in airports and making people uncomfortable. But then I was on a plane when it happened. I didn't have the internet on. And I was just sitting next to some guy in medical sales who was just like telling me about his job, and I didn't like say anything about how momentous a morning it was that was unfolding. And we were landing in Dallas. I turned my phone. I was like, "Well, I think I'm gonna find out if I'm an Oscar nominee." He's like, "Wait, what?" And I had 150 text messages as I turned my phone on, and it honestly took a while to even figure out what happened or what we were nominated for. But you also had a nice.
I didn't want to watch it, and I was packing to come here actually, and I was like in the closet packing a suitcase, and then my wife turned it on the TV, and she's like, "Just don't be an idiot, just watch it." And it was my wife and my son and I, and we watched it, and I don't know, like we had no expectations, and so it all just felt like Christmas morning coming through. It's amazing. It's crazy.
I was bummed that Clarence Maclin didn't get its
We're all
actor
bummed that Clarence
nomination.
Maclin
For an actor who'd never been in front of a camera like that, he was really impressive.
To pull off that performance
Yes.
too, and all of the varieties of what he does there, it's astounding. And I think like he will have a long career. He'll be good.
And he's got the best perspective of it all. Just like, I mean, once we're even at Toronto in 2023, he was like, "Y'all, we did it," you know. And everything after that happens is just part of the joy and the ride. But I mean, if you think about it, like Gotham Award-winning actor, Independent Spirit Award nominated, BAFTA nominated, and now he's also an Oscar nominee because of the screenplay. And so he did get some beautiful recognition that I actually just hope enables him to make a career out of this, because I just want to keep seeing what he creates and does as a performer.
Yeah, I mean, those guys are amazing campaigners. Like, they're up there with the best of them, basically, tirelessly. So in this movie, Joel, you're playing a logger at the turn of the 20th century, and it's based on a Denis Johnson novel. What attracted you to work with these guys?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, you know, I had read the novella years ago and had myself inquired about the rights of it, which I found out were taken.
Sorry.
Now I know who by.
Sorry about that.
And I let it go. And then years later, I got this email about would I be interested to get involved in the film as an actor, and it felt like someone knew the inner workings of my brain. And then it suddenly made me very nervous about reading the screenplay and hoping that it was wonderful. And then, of course, then I knew that Clint was making it, and I'd seen Jockey, and the whole thing felt almost too good to be true. And these guys had done such a wonderful job of turning quite a challenging transition from the novella to a screenplay, given that the story spans such a massive breadth of time in one man's life. So I was very eager from the moment that I was contacted about it, and everything that happened afterwards just felt like the right step forward.
There's an interesting kismet with this movie because you're starring with Felicity Jones, who's the star of The Brutalist that originally you were attached to star in. Was like, that was going to be the Adrian Brody role? Yeah. Have you seen the movie? Or
I haven't. I think
you're still tender? Okay, you have seen it.
I'm not tender about it, actually. I'm happy for a number of reasons that, there's a long story as to why I'm not a part of that film. and they're the right reasons, and it also means that I could sit back and appreciate what Brady had achieved, what they'd all achieved, and I think it's an extraordinary film. And you know, I know a lot of filmmakers will look at that film and get excited for the reasons of the budget he made it for and the number of days, which general audiences won't. But it's a double feat considering all that extra stuff. I was very impressed when I saw it.
Well, Clint, you were here a few years ago with another movie that kind of takes us into the heartland, which was Jockey.
Yeah.
What was your relationship to Denis Johnson for this movie, and what spoke to you cinematically about the novel?
Yeah, I mean, this is actually my first time here in person because Jockey was during the first pandemic year, and so I actually haven't been on the streets of Park City. It's very exciting.
I watched Jockey on my computer. I remember
Yeah.
that day.
We watched it on
As it
the
should be
couch.
watched.
Yeah.
No, I've been a Denis Johnson fan for since college for many years, and Train Dreams was actually the first book that I read. I just happened upon it, and it was such a miracle of a book that then I was like, I have to read everything by this person. And so I've been a huge Denis Johnson fan for a while. The producers who actually had the rights to the book saw Jockey, and they'd been trying to figure out someone to make the film with for a while, and sent it over. And I don't know if I would have actually had the courage to make the film had they not asked, because there's just so much, like Joel was saying, there's so much breadth to the story, but also goes by so quickly. The novel's it's a novella. It's only 117 pages, and yet it tells this person's life. And I think there were so many things that excited me about it cinematically, where it felt like a bed of things thematically and emotionally to talk about that I had started exploring on Jockey that could continue into here, about just what is our place in the world, and when you die, and looking back, what's actually important. And our relationship to nature and things like that. And then just cinematically, the amount of things that it gave the opportunity to do in terms of exploring dreams and history and logging, and it felt like a feast to step into. It was lovely.
Yeah, was there an immersive process for the actors? And Joel, how did you kind of prepare for the physicality? And we're talking about logging. Maybe it's not necessarily something that you're familiar with doing all the time.
Yeah, I don't spend a lot of my time chopping wood.
Yeah.
But I did in Seattle.
You did in the
and
movie,
Spokane.
though, yeah.
I weirdly, this is going to make some people roll their eyes at me, but I kind of consider myself that I belong in a different part of history, and when I read these stories, I really connect with them. And Clint and I have spoken about this. We both, my grandfather and my great-grandfather were farmers and cattle drivers, and my grandfather became a train driver. And when I read these stories, I think there's part of me that wishes that I could experience the things that they'd experienced. And I really connect with these stories. And I love movies that allow you to kind of learn new things and get physical. And I feel good being on set in nature. And I was really, drawn to this for those other reasons as well. And there's certain skills, and you want to make sure that you're doing things just so. And along the way, we had to really take care because we were talking about logging, and we obviously don't want to just go in cavalier and start presuming we could chop down a bunch of trees.
Yeah.
So there was a real artfulness actually in the consideration of how how Clint captured these things, and yet we were doing it in ways that were, done with certain tricks and certain builds, and, taking care of the nature while also kind of talking about an industry that wasn't quite aware of taking care of that nature.
Yeah, and they just thought these trees would just come right back, that they took down, and that they were thousands of years old, and even still you feel like the echoes of what was there, and it's still gorgeous, a lot has grown back, but you also sit in these spaces and you imagine if we hadn't have leveled it all to the ground at that time, to fund the industrialization of this country, what might we witness if we were to be able to walk through these forests if they had been untouched.
Yeah, that's interesting what you're saying. I wonder how do you introduce logging thoughtfully into an environment for the sake of a movie production where you're not, tarnishing the actual nature.
We took a very similar approach that we took on Jockey, which was, we went into a working racetrack on Jockey and just folded our actors into it. And it was a very similar approach on this, where there's a lot of logging still going on up in the Pacific Northwest in Washington State. And so we would just fold our actors into that space where trees were already getting pulled down. And it makes it to where you can be more thoughtful and not, do some of the same things you're critiquing in the movie of just kind of wantonly pulling down trees. But then also it brings a level of scale when you have, and safety of like people who are used to doing this all day, and then we're kind of folding actors into it and folding our crew into it.
On that note, thank you guys all so much for coming in here.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks.